There we go. Medical apartheid. We're continuing to read from this chapter. I think I'll be done with the chapter soon enough, but it's a very interesting chapter. Let's continue. This section is called the Mississippi Appendectomy. It's really loud. I have my window open. It's really hot. It feels like we're in a heat wave, but I don't know if technically it is one, but it's been very hot. The pill may have been flawed and IUD deadly, but these methods were at least quasi-voluntary and their effects were usually temporary. The most damaging threat to African American reproductive freedom has been invasive and permanent, compulsory surgical sterilization. When the infamous German eugenic sterilization initiative began in January 1934, 17 U.S. states were already performing sterilizations routinely. In that year, between 2,000 and 4,000 Americans were sterilized. Indiana passed legislation requiring the sterilization of the mentally unfit in 1907. By 1911, 6 states had passed laws providing the compulsory sterilization of the mentally unfit. In 1935, 27 states had such laws for the feeble-minded, those on welfare, or those with genetic defects. So basically, poor people. Forced sterilization was encouraged by the infamous 1927 Buck v. Bell decision, wherein Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes ordered the sterilization of the allegedly imbecilic poor white girl Carrie Buck, intoning, "3 generations of imbeciles are enough." By the 1930s, compulsory sterilization had become a global enterprise, and by 1941, sterilization had been forced upon 70,000 to 100,000 Americans, 9,931 of them in California alone. African Americans have always been staggeringly overrepresented in the ranks of the sterilization, of course, like prisons and everything else negative. When the North Carolina Eugenics Commission sterilized 8,000 mentally retarded persons throughout the 1930s, 5,000 were black. By 1983, and I was alive at this, when blacks constituted only 12% of the population, 43% of the women sterilized in federally funded family planning programs were African American. I had no idea this was going on. I was like a teenager. This has been achieved under the auspices of a government fed by the myth of the lazy, hyper-fertile welfare mother. Say welfare mother and most people think of an unemployed black woman. Yet most women on welfare are not black. A 1990 survey revealed that 78% of the whites think blacks prefer welfare to employment. But most black women are employed full-time and hold at least one job. And women on welfare are likely to be employed part-time in low-wage jobs with few, if any, benefits. Black women have always worked. They've never had a chance to be kept, never wanted to. Kept is prison. They've always worked even more than black men because we never get to have stable workplaces. Where was I? However, a black woman is more likely to receive FDC, aid to dependent children, the form of public assistance given to people with minor children, than is a white woman. Black women constitute 6% of the population, but represent 1/3 of those on AFDC. And in some poor urban areas, such as Baltimore, which is 86% black, the majority of people on welfare are also black. Forced sterilization and welfare have been linked for nearly half a century. Mississippi State Legislator David H. Glass instituted a bold experiment when he sought legal means to force sterilization upon welfare mothers in 1958. By 1960, his act to discourage immorality of unmarried females by providing for sterilization and the unwed mothers passed in the House by a vote of 72 to 37, but died in the Senate. Died in the Senate as the Black Activist Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee (SNCC) protested and distributed a pamphlet entitled "Genocide in Mississippi." Most sterilizations of poor black women have been performed outside of the law and in violation of medical mores. In June 1973, the abuse of two young sisters in Montgomery, Alabama exposed the decades of stolen African American fertility. 12-year-old Mary Alice Ralph and her sister Minnie, 14, lived on relief with their parents, who had left their meager living as field hands in an unsuccessful search for work in the city. A Montgomery Community Action Agency nurse took the girls to the hospital for a federally funded contraceptive shot and obtained the X of each illiterate parent on the consent form. But their parents later learned that the girls had been surgically sterilized, and they asked Atlanta's Southern Poverty Law Center for help. When SPLC filed a class action lawsuit to end the use of federal funds for involuntary sterilization, its lawyers discovered that 100,000 to 150,000 women had been sterilized using federal funds, and that half these women were black. Today, 1/3 of all adult Mississippi women and 50% of all Mississippi women 65 and older say they have undergone a hysterectomy. And so, um, that's it. You know, sterilization program. The one thing about reading these things, they're so overwhelming, you really don't have to say much. And that's why I love bringing you these kinds of material. And again, this is a mainstream book. This is not some conspiratorial, underground. This is mainstream. Okay? Um, so that's it. Until next time, try to stay safe and try to stay sane.